Fantasy football drafts are right around the corner, and I've got you covered with what I think will be the number one draft strategy in fantasy football leagues this year if you have an early round pick. If you can't wait to start drafting fantasy football teams, you don't have to. Underdog Fantasy has drafts with entry fees as low as $4 and prize pools up to $15 million. And of course, their flagship Best Ball Mania 5, where someone will win over $1 million. Plus, if you sign up and use promo code ENDGAME, you'll get a special pick that you can use to potentially win 325 times your entry. And you're going to get up to $250 in bonus cash. Don't wait, go join Underdog Fantasy now and use promo code ENDGAME to get your special pick and cash. Now, before I go round by round and let you know who you should be targeting in each round of your fantasy football draft if you have an early round pick, I'm going to let you know I'm going to break this up into two sections. Section number one is if you have the number one pick, because if you have the number one pick, you're probably drafting Christian McCaffrey, and I think that is going to drastically alter how the rest of your draft should go. Then the other section I'll look at if you have picks 2, 3, or 4, and how I would target out of those slots. But let's start with the 101. You're taking Christian McCaffrey at the number one pick. I know some of you are going to be tempted to go wide receiver. Some of you might be a little worried, like, hey, Christian McCaffrey, what if he gets hurt? He's a running back. Yeah, I get all that, but at the same time, we've seen if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy for a full 17 games, he's an absolute league winner, an absolute stud. I think you've got to pull the trigger at the 101 and hope he stays healthy. Now, if I have the 101 and I am taking Christian McCaffrey, I am going to then go all in on anchor running back. If you don't know what anchor running back is, that's where you draft one early elite stud running back and then you wait a while for your RB2 and you attack other positions like wide receiver, maybe tight end, maybe QB. That's going to be my general preferred strategy here once I take Christian McCaffrey. So after I grab Christian McCaffrey, when it comes back to me at the end of round 2, start of round 3, I'm going to definitely be targeting wide receivers here. And the guys I'm going to be looking for, I'm going to try to get 2 of, are Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, Jalen Waddle, and Devonta Smith. If I can somehow get 2 of those guys to pair up with Christian McCaffrey as my RB1, I'll be feeling fantastic through the first 3 rounds. Now again, when it gets back to me in rounds 4 to 5, I'm not going to feel the urge to get my RB2 right away. The elite running backs are pretty much gone at this point. There's still a lot of wide receivers I like and even some tight ends I like. So my preferred strategy here is going to be to grab 1 wide receiver and 1 tight end depending on who is on the board still. If I can get one of Terry McLaurin, Hollywood Brown, maybe even Christian Kirk if he falls to me here as my wide receiver 3, I am doing that 100% of the time. And then if I can get one of Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, or Dalton Kincaid as my tight end one here, which you often can in this slot, I will happily do that. Giving me a great start through 5 rounds. I've got 3 very good wide receivers, a stud tight end, and an absolutely elite running back. Now when we get to round 6 and 7, this is where you can start to think about your RB2. If Ramondre Stevenson or Zamir White are on the board here, I will grab one of them. I slightly prefer Ramondre Stevenson because of the pass catching, but either one of these guys as my RB2 with CMC is just fine. And then I still want to get another wide receiver, so I'm going to look at guys like Deontay Johnson, Rashee Rice, Christian Watson, if you're willing to take the risk, which I am because I love the upside here. If I can get one of those guys as my wide receiver 4, yeah, well worth the risk for any of those guys. And then in rounds 8 and 9, it's time to look at QB. There's some great QB values this late. Oftentimes, you can actually get Dak Prescott this late, who was absolutely fantastic last year in fantasy. If he's not your jive, you can also get guys like Jordan Love. Maybe take a chance on rookie Jaden Daniels with that rushing upside. Waiting on QB this year feels like a fantastic strategy, and I would love to wait till this round to get one of those guys at QB. And then I'm going to get some running back depth here as my RB3. If guys like DeAndre Swift, Raheem Mostert, James Conner are still on the board, which they often are, I'll take one of those guys as my RB3. Now, when we get to rounds 10 plus, I'm not going to go round by round here, but the nice thing is you already have a QB, you already have a tight end, you've got 3 running backs, you've got 4 wide receivers, so you can just start drafting best player available. Remember, in these later rounds, you want upside, upside, upside. So we're looking for upside running backs, upside wide receivers. Please don't take a second QB. Please don't take a second tight end. You're good there. Just focus on wide receiver and running backs. And look, if you're not sure who to draft, we've done this many times. We even did a top 10 must-have sleepers video. I'll link to that at the end of this video so you can see some guys you should be targeting later in your draft. All right, now let's talk if you don't have the number 1 pick and Christian McCaffrey gets taken at the number 1 pick, but you have picks 2 through 4. Your pick 2, pick 3, pick 4. What should you be doing there? For me, I'm going to target an elite wide receiver here. I know Bijan, Breece Hall, they're going to look tempting, and I think they're okay. But I think this year especially, I can't remember a year where I've ever felt like running backs were actually being drafted at fair value. They're always overdrafted every single year, which is why going wide receiver heavy has been such a phenomenal strategy, the last 5+ years. But this year we're seeing a shift. We're seeing wide receivers go much earlier, and running backs, there's plenty of value in drafts. So I'm going to take one of these early stud wide receivers. That would be CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, or Justin Jefferson. And as much as I like Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson, I'm going to wait and get my running backs later. Now, obviously, when it comes back to you here, your options are going to be a bit different because unlike the 101 where you have 2 picks in a row, you're going to have a pick, and then you might have 3 or 4 picks before your next pick, depending on where you're drafting. But again, I'm going to go 2 wide receivers here. I like the running back value we can get later. I'm going to target elite wide receivers. And the guys I'm going to be targeting here, Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, and then DJ Moore, DK Metcalf. If you're picking from the 104 and maybe some of those guys are gone or get picked before you, I also like DJ Moore and DK Metcalf in this range. Now in rounds 4 and 5, we can target our first running back because you're going to see guys like Travis Etienne, Isaiah Pacheco, Josh Jacobs are going to be available in this range, or at least they are right now on Underdog Fantasy. Look, maybe by August this will change when running backs value kind of pumps up a little bit more. But right now in the 4th round, you can often get these guys as your RB1. I think there's no problem having any 3 of these guys as my RB1. And then around 5, I'm going to target tight end again. Same guys I gave you with the Christian McCaffrey list if you watched that one. Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid. Any one of those guys as my tight end 1 in round 5, totally fine with. Now in round 6 and 7, I'm going to target QB here because I feel like Kyler Murray, you can get him in this range, and I think he's a fantastic value. If you can get Kyler Murray in this range, absolutely do it. I think this guy has top 5 QB upside going at a discount in fantasy drafts. So if you can get Kyler Murray here, do it. And then I'm going to go back to wide receiver, and I'm going to get 1 or 2 of Deontay Johnson, Christian Watson, Rashee Rice, Ladd McConkey. If I can get 1 or 2 of these guys as my wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, I'm definitely doing it. But hopefully you can get a guy like Kyler Murray. Sometimes even a guy like Anthony Richardson might fall this far. If you can get one of those guys as your QB and then get one of these guys at wide receiver, that's fantastic. Now in round 8 and 9, it's time to hammer running back. We only have 1, but like I said, there's still some very good running backs on the board in this range. You can get guys like DeAndre Swift, James Conner, Raheem Mostert, Zach Moss, who's now the RB1 in Cincinnati, Tony Pollard, who still has plenty of value. You can get 2 of these guys as your RB2, as your RB3, and still feel very good about your running back room, even though you waited, but you also have elite wide receivers, you have an elite QB, you have an elite tight end. This is the kind of team you want to draft in fantasy this year. This is the kind of team that can take you to a championship. And then, as I said, if you watched the Christian McCaffrey part, but if you didn't, if you skipped ahead to this, I said I'm not going to go through round by round, rounds 10 plus, because there's a lot of options here. But again, you have an elite QB, you have an elite tight end, you've got 3 running backs, you've got 4 to 5 wide receivers, depending on how you drafted. You're set there. You should just be taking best player available with upside in rounds 10 plus. And if you're not sure who those are, we did a video just a little while ago, our top 10 must-have sleepers. You can see who we like in the later rounds in that video right here.